Hi, my name is Nikki Pulfer, and I'm excited to be a part of St. Maria Goretti's new Leadership Workshop initiative. Today, I'm going to talk about engaging your community through effective communication. I've been a parishioner of St. Maria Goretti for about 12 years now. My husband and I got married here. Our kids go to school. We play sports there. We've both participated in Christ Renews. I actually converted to Catholicism through RCIA just a few years ago. We engage in a lot of ways because we really love this community. Most recently, I was the chair for Ladies Candlelight Dinner, which is an evening hosted by the Altar Rosary Society. So that's the ministry I'm representing today. I assumed that at some point I would be pegged to host an event at SMG because I am a graphic designer for the event and wedding world. So I've always been a graphic designer ever since middle school, really even before I had the language to understand what that really meant. This was before Steve Jobs had convinced everyone that form was just as important as function. And so graphic designers weren't as prevalent as they are now. But I had always had, just sort of an analytical eye when I looked at any printed advertisement or a book cover or, a magazine layout, even worksheets that my teachers would hand me in school. I was always evaluating what is the message here, and is it being effectively communicated? And a lot of times the answer was like, no, not really. A few things need to, change and adjust to make this more effective. So I started my college hunt, and on a whim, I went to Ohio State to tour the campus. I really loved it there, but I, of course, was most interested in what majors were offered. And as I was doing some research, I came across the words I've been looking for my entire life: visual communications design. It hit me like a lightning bolt. That's it. That's what I want to do. I want to visually communicate through effective design. So out of college, I got a job at an insurance company. And like all insurance companies, they hosted a lot of client events, some big, some small, but all super high end. Our biggest event of the year was around the Indianapolis 500. We called it Race Weekend. And designing invitations for the annual race weekend was where I discovered my niche. I learned how to storytell. I wanted to tell the story of this experience, this whole weekend, and then the Indianapolis 500 through this initial touch point of the invitation. I wanted guests to feel the drama, the anticipation, the excitement from the moment they held the invite in their hands. So we created a story. Here you see this white sleeve, ladies and gentlemen. When you pulled out the black part, you read, "Start your engines." And I've got to imagine that as they slid that out and read, "Start your engines," they heard the engines start in their heads. They might have even smelled it. They might have felt a rumble in their chest. I was hooked. I loved this concept of storytelling through graphic design. So I worked there for a few years, but I wanted to dedicate myself totally to this. So in 2011, I started Pomp and Polish. From that point on, I would take on wedding and corporate clients that were looking for ultra custom invitations. What do I mean by ultra custom? I mean invitations designed in such a way that a personal story unfolds. I mean mirroring an epic window in the venue space, like I did for Kristen and Tim. I mean recreating the moment a bride got engaged in Paris, like I did for Sabrina and Danny. I mean creating wedding invitations for your best friend who is such an artist, so everything she does is handmade, and her invite needed to be too. I mean learning that a bride and groom's favorite date night is putt-putt. So let's put a score sheet in the program and build a couple holes so guests can play at the reception. This is the kind of thing that draws your guests in to what is so special about the reason they're even there. I mean, hearing a bride talk about her father who passed away only a year earlier, how they celebrated every special occasion at West Baden. She wanted to have her wedding there because the place meant everything to her. So we made it everything to her guests too. And guys, I just have to show you, this is what her first dance looked like. So this is the storytelling nature of my work. So while you might be quick to think, okay, those are pretty pictures, but what does that have to do with my ministry? Know this, the wedding and event industry is all about guest experience. It's not about the bride and groom. It's not about the company hosting the event. It's about the guests, enticing people to join in, engage, get their buy-in. In the age of social media and Pinterest, what sets an experience apart is the story that unfolds. And it unfolds through cohesive details that make an emotional connection to what you're trying to achieve. Every ministry has a story. What's your hook? What's your angle? Your superpower is finding and utilizing that story in a way that encourages people to engage in what you're doing. So how are you communicating to your community? Is your message clear? Do people know what you're asking of them? Is your message concise? Effective communication is communication that engages a reader or listener instantly. Is your message transparent? Are you being see-through? Are you explicitly explaining what one can expect at an event, a gathering, a meeting? Misconceptions are enough to keep people away. You have to paint the picture. Can people visualize what it is your ministry does and how they can specifically contribute? And is your message confident? It's okay to brag. Give the impression that your ministry is thriving and people will want to join in. So this idea of effective communication through storytelling is the skill set I wanted to bring to Ladies Candlelight Dinner. So as I mentioned earlier, Ladies Candlelight Dinner is a dinner hosted by Alta Rosary Society. It hosts from 200 and 250 ladies. It's an annual event. Dinner, raffle baskets to raise a little money, and a speaker. I've been to Ladies Candlelight Dinner several years leading up to my being chair. I've always had a nice evening. It's a nice time to get together with the other women in our parish, but it is in late February on a Thursday night. And for a demographic like me, someone who's raising a young family, working, running around, week after week, it can be kind of hard to get out on a Thursday night in the winter. So I wanted to sort of change the story into something that would inspire people to overcome those barriers and still come to this event. So I met with the previous chairs to get a lay of the land, and I learned two very major things. First, before this meeting, I actually didn't know that Ladies Candlelight Dinner was connected to Alta Rosary Society. I mean, sure, it's an all-women dinner, and Alta Rosary Society is a group of the women of our church, but no one had ever made that connection for me. And I don't think that connection had been made for a lot of women. And that seems like a big miss. Alta Rosary Society hosts this annual event so that the women of our parish might engage in the mission of the ministry. If people don't know, Candlelight is because of Alta Rosary Society. then Altar Rosary Society is missing a huge opportunity. The other thing I learned is that we actually needed to raise money that year. I appreciate that fundraising doesn't always come first at our events at SMG, but the year that I took over, the Altar Rosary Society had contributed to new vestments for Father Will Summerlin, who was being ordained later that year. This was a year where we actually needed to focus on raising money. So I left there with a major goal for my event: education. We need to educate people on these two missions: connecting Altar Rosary Society to Ladies Candlelight and raising some money. So our first step was clarifying our message. We came up with a tagline that distilled the entire evening into 3 words: faith, fellowship, fundraising. And this went on everything. We developed a marketing plan. How was our message going to come across? What was our tone? How do we get people engaged and interested in this event? At St. Maria Goretti, these are the communication methods we have. We developed a marketing plan where we wrote out exactly what we wanted to say in each one of these platforms. And we didn't hit these outlets just once. Our plan laid out a sustained presence on all of these mediums. And every time we marketed, we used phrases like grab a friend, neighbor, or family member. Enjoy a lovely evening out. We wanted to set a friendly, welcoming, approachable tone, so we would break down any barriers to coming. With our marketing plan on autopilot, it was time to start planning the actual event. If there was an element that came up or an opportunity presented to us that wasn't mission critical to our 2 goals, raising money and educating, I cut it. We stayed focused on our goals, and I'm super proud of a few things that we implemented. So I worked with Altar Rosary Society to get some fun facts and some stats about the ministry as a whole, and all the ways it contributes to St. Maria Goretti. I put together a slideshow, and this slideshow was just in the background. And it told people things like ARS donated money to the school's playground equipment. I mean, how would you have known that? It shows pictures of the vestments they just helped purchase for Father Will Summerlin. It explained what the altar and Altar Rosary Society sort of represents. We created a program and put one at every place setting. And this program introduced everyone to the seminarians that ARS is helping support. It gave a more in-depth description of what the ministry is all about and what it hopes to achieve. We actually outlined all the contributions ARS had made to our church and school community that year. These are the things that created an emotional connection that our guests will remember. And it enhanced the reputation of the event, so people wanted to come back. People left that evening feeling nourished by the fellowship. They donated in record numbers, and they knew they had just participated in an Altar Rosary Society event. The night was a huge success, and that is due in part because we shook things up a bit. As I've said, I'm constantly evaluating and editing. I think it's good to regularly ask the question, do we need this? Should we change how that works? So here are a few things for everyone to consider for their ministries. Don't assume people know what your ministry is or what it does. Some of these ministries have been around even before St. Maria Goretti. I know that. But that doesn't mean people know who you are or what you do. We live in a very transient community with people coming and going year after year. So every marketing message should have an element of education in it. Think about the things that are standard or customary or traditional for your ministry. Is it time to change some of those? You know, I knew very early on to planning my first candlelight that the theme we had created for the year just really wasn't necessary. You probably didn't even notice, but in the marketing pictures that I showed, we had actually called the event Fireside Fellowship. We did this because every year Candlelight had a theme. But the thing is no one referenced the theme ever. No one ever referred to it as Fireside Fellowship. I didn't even. Everyone calls it Ladies Candlelight or just Candlelight. So to clarify our message, the next year and moving forward, we're just going to call it what it is. Ladies Candlelight Dinner. Don't take baskets for granted. So what do I mean by this? Ladies Candlelight Dinner has a long tradition of raffle baskets. You'd get together in a group and kind of pick a leader, and that leader would develop a basket that could be raffled off to raise money. It was kind of just a word of mouth, oral tradition thing. If you were new to SMG, you'd have to keep your ear pretty close to the ground to even know that a basket was expected of you. And furthermore, we wanted to encourage people to come alone or in a small group. So what do you do then? We laid it out for people. We told them exactly how to do it. And with some direction and clarity, we got more baskets and higher quality items that raised more money. Don't squander any opportunity to talk live about your ministry. I know many of us have done pulpit announcements. I've actually done a few. I've done them for Christ Renews, Ladies Candlelight Dinner. And here's the thing. It is the best opportunity to talk to the masses all at once. So practice it, rehearse it. You know, your message is genuine, but it might not come across that way if you're just reading. You don't have to read your announcement. We can do that in the bulletin. Use this opportunity to engage with this group. Our pulpit announcement for Candlelight was the perfect opportunity to speak to all of our audiences. No matter the stories of the people in the room, we were able to really address, hey, if you've been at this parish for years, you know the drill, but here's the drill for those listening. And if you're new, let me make you feel comfortable about how to attend this event and that you can come alone. You know, that's the whole point, was fellowship. So we wanted people to feel comfortable coming, even if they had not met anyone at the church yet. One of the very first things I did when I took over Candlelight was talk to Kevin Muller about getting a G Suite. I needed a Google email address. You know, if I'm going to be reaching out to potential sponsors, I didn't want that to come from nikki.pulfer@gmail.com. I wanted it to look legitimate. You know, Ladies Candlelight Dinner has been around for a really long time. So we needed an email address to reflect that. And really the best part about that is Google Drive. You could store all of your documents there, spreadsheets, contracts, pictures. You can work on them live with your team And then they're also there for future planning. The next person that takes over Candlelight will have access to all of our timelines and all of the documents we had to plan that event. This day and age, we all know this, but you have to say it. Pictures do the talking. If you cannot have a photographer at your event or at your meeting or at your outreach, that's okay because you have a smartphone. Just spend a few minutes to be mindful of the kinds of images you're taking and then use them. It is the best way for someone to visualize themselves engaging in your ministry so that they might volunteer. The speakers at Candlelight have always been really great. But the year I took over, I was actually given a national speaker with a national following. So through marketing her, we were able to reach other churches, and a handful of people even came from Kokomo. It increased our attendance by nearly 100 people, and that number sustained through the following year. It gave us a bump in attendance that lasted beyond just that event. All of our ministries are about helping others. But when we're inspiring people to engage, we have to speak to their personal motivation. What might this person be seeking? How do you fit into their story? I read this somewhere, and I think it is so true that we're at, the current climate is such that our ministries need to provide meaning, purpose, and flexibility. If you communicate those things, people will be totally willing to engage. So I think everyone is looking for community right now. Many experts have said that this global pandemic and, the quarantining and social distancing will help people regain an appreciation for simple acts of togetherness, for community. So we're in a good spot. I think it's, a great time to put some work into retooling our messaging, laying out a marketing plan, and make sure you're telling your story so that when people are ready to fully engage, you'll be ready. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to list just a few helpful resources. As a graphic designer, I know that I have an advantage when it comes to marketing. So here, these 3 websites offer free or nearly free assets that you can use even if you don't have sophisticated design tools. So thank you very much.